In 1894, the first scenes of the American West were captured on film. These 7 short films consisted of Buffalo Bill shooting a rifle, Annie Oakley shooting a rifle, a bucking bronco, a lasso thrower, an exhibition of a Mexican knife duel, and Native Americans performing the buffalo dance and the ghost dance. Of the 7, 4 of the films still exist. That of Annie Oakley, the bucking bronco, the buffalo dance, and the ghost dance. 3 of the films are considered to be lost. That of Buffalo Bill shooting, the lasso thrower, and the Mexican knife duel. Although still images of those films do exist. These films were the product of a collaboration between Thomas Alva Edison and William Buffalo Bill Cody. Thomas Edison had developed the first motion picture camera, the kinetograph, and Buffalo Bill had perfected his Wild West show. The 2 ideas naturally complemented each other. Edison had a way to capture the world on film, and Buffalo Bill had a show that was worth being seen. The first motion picture camera, the kinetograph, was developed by Thomas Edison and his assistant, William Dixon, in 1890. In 1892, they created a way for people to view the footage captured, a device known as the kinetoscope. The kinetoscope was a large box with a peephole to view the film inside, which limited it to 1 person per kinetoscope. With those 2 necessary inventions out of the way, films would need to be produced for people to watch. And so in December of 1892, construction began on a motion picture studio near Edison's home and laboratory at West Orange, New Jersey. The studio was named the Kinetographic Theater by William Dixon, but it was commonly referred to as Black Maria, as it resembled a police patrol wagon. The building was 15 by 50 feet and covered by black tar paper. The roof of the studio could be opened to allow sunlight inside, and the entire building was mounted on a revolving pivot in order for it to be positioned at the best angle for the light to come in. In 1894, over 75 motion pictures were recorded, the majority filmed at the studio. On May 19, 1883, Buffalo Bill's Wild West show first opened at Omaha, Nebraska. The show was the result of a lifetime on the frontier and years in the public spotlight. Cody had earned his nickname of Buffalo Bill by hunting buffalo to provide meat for railroad workers. He had been a scout for the cavalry, was in the Battle of Summit Springs, received the Medal of Honor, and had returned as an Army Scout following the Battle of the Little Bighorn. But Cody had also been the subject of a dime novel written by Ned Buntline, Buffalo Bill, King of the Bordermen, and even played himself on the stage in 1872 in The Scouts of the Prairie, produced by Ned Buntline. Cody would form the theatrical troupe The Buffalo Bill Combination and would continue his work as an actor. In 1878, he began using Indians as actors on the stage, and in 1879 he would publish an autobiography. By the time he formed his Wild West show in 1883, Cody was a veteran actor and frontiersman, a winning combination for audiences. Cody's Wild West show contained dramatic events, acts of skill and daring, displays of American Indians, all while an orator provided narration and the cowboy band provided the music. Thomas Edison first met Buffalo Bill in Paris during the Universal Exposition of 1889, a World's Fair whose central attraction was the newly completed Eiffel Tower. Both Edison and Cody had been invited to the same party, and that evening, Cody invited Edison for breakfast at his camp outside of Paris. At breakfast, Edison brought a phonograph, which was enjoyed by the members of the show. During the afternoon performance of Cody's Wild West show, Edison rode in the Deadwood stagecoach as they performed a mock attack by the Indian actors. In 1893, during the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, Edison and Cody met again. Originally, Edison was going to provide kinetoscopes for the exposition, but he was in short supply of both kinetoscopes and films to be viewed, and so could only speak about the invention. Cody's Wild West show was not deemed appropriate for the exposition, so instead he opened his show nearby, which attracted over 27 million people. This proved the popularity of Cody's show, not only to the exposition organizers, but to Edison as well. In the summer of 1894, Buffalo Bill's Wild West show performed at Ambrose Park in South Brooklyn. Nearby was Edison's Black Maria studio in New Jersey. It's unknown whether it was Edison's idea or Cody's to film members of the Wild West show with the kinetograph, but it would benefit both. Edison would get films to produce that would excite audiences, and Cody would receive publicity. On September 24, 1894, Buffalo Bill, along with several of the American Indians under his employ, went to Edison's Black Maria studio to be recorded. William Heiss worked the kinetograph camera, while William Dixon acted as producer. The first footage they captured that day was of Buffalo Bill shooting a rifle. Edison had always wondered if his camera could pick up the flight of a bullet. The film is considered to be lost. However, in 1895, William and Antonia Dixon published the book History of the Kinetograph, Knetoscope, and Kinetophonograph. In this book, the authors included still frames from some of the films produced. All three of the lost films produced by Edison and Cody in 1894 had frames published in this book. There are 16 frames included that show Buffalo Bill shooting his rifle in the studio. By cutting out the individual frames and using video editing software, I've been able to animate those 16 frames into a very, very low resolution video. Bear in mind, the original film that was lost had a longer runtime. These 16 frames are only a small part of that runtime, and the speed of motion is different than the original film would have been. I've looped the video as it's under 2 seconds long. Despite the poor quality, you can still make out that Cody is crouched on one knee and firing to the right with a lever-action rifle. Smoke can be seen before he takes his shot, and more smoke can be seen exiting the rifle barrel. The film was listed in Edison's 1895 Knetoscope catalog as costing $12.50 to order. After footage had been captured of Buffalo Bill shooting, it was time for the Indians to perform. Their first performance was described as the Sioux Ghost Dance, although there is debate if this was actually the Ghost Dance or if the film was just named that. This was the first time American Indians were captured on film. As the stage and the studio was small, the Indians are cramped together in the film. The Indians were from the Oglala and Brule tribes and consisted of Chief Last Horse, Chief Parts' Hair, Chief Black Cat, Haircoat, Charging Crow, Dull Knife, Holy Bear, Crazy Bear, Strong Talker, Pine, Little Eagle, Young Bear, and Runsabout. The two boys are Johnny No Neck Burke and 7-Up. The Ghost Dance was not only a dance, but a religious movement among the American Indians. It began in 1870, but became very popular in the winter of 1888 and 1889. Members of the Ghost Dance movement believed that by following the teachings of the prophet Wovoka, deceased Indians would be resurrected, the bison would return, and white settlers would disappear. The Lakota Sioux tribe adopted the Ghost Dance movement, but added clothing, known as ghost shirts, to the ceremonies. These ghost shirts, made out of white muslin, were believed to protect the wearer from harm. Belief in the Ghost Dance by the Lakota stopped after the conflict at Wounded Knee on December 29, 1890. The Ghost Dance sparked fears in the military of an Indian outbreak, which led to the conflict. Known as the Wounded Knee Massacre, more than 250 Lakota Sioux Indians were killed, and 25 men of the 7th Cavalry were killed. Less than 4 years passed after Wounded Knee when this footage was taken. The last film to be recorded that day was the Buffalo Dance, although in the 1895 book History of the Kinetograph, it's described as the Omaha War Dance. The buffalo dance was performed to ensure the return of the buffalo herds, so that there would be an abundance of food and resources for the Indian tribes. The buffalo dance may also refer to a part of a larger ceremony, like the sun dance, or the curing of the sick by invoking the spirit of the buffalo. There were less Indians on the stage for the buffalo dance. Perhaps Edison and Dixon had learned from the previous dance that there was just not enough room in the studio to adequately capture all of the American Indians there. After Cody and the Indians of the Wild West show performed in front of Edison's kinetograph in September, several other members of his show would stay behind in the following months to be filmed in the Black Maria studio. On October 16, 1894, a bucking bronco would be filmed in a fenced-in area behind the studio. The bronco's name was Sunfish. The man riding the bronco was Lee Martin, and Frank Hammett sat on the fence and fired his revolver in order to make things even more exciting. Lee Martin was a bronco rider for the Wild West show and was featured that September as riding the horse Jumbo, who was 4 times as large as his rider. Frank Hammett had been chief of cowboys for the Wild West show and would later work as a ranger in the Shoshone National Forest of Wyoming. On November 1st, 1894, the Black Maria studio would host the famous sharpshooter Annie Oakley. Annie Oakley began her career with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show in 1885. Her nickname of Little Miss Sure Shot was given to her by Sitting Bull. By the time she was recorded by Edison's kinetograph, she was 34 years old and had been performing shooting exhibitions for 14 years, since she first appeared on stage with her husband, Frank Butler, in 1882. Filmed for the first time at Edison's studio, she performed with her husband as her assistant. First, shooting at targets mounted on a board, and then changing out rifles to shoot at glass balls Frank threw in the air. As seen on the film, the husband and wife team worked well together, and it's no wonder how they were able to entertain large audiences. The last 2 films produced by Edison and Cody are The Lasso Thrower and The Mexican Knife Duel. Both films are considered to be lost, but still frames were published in the History of the Kinetograph, Knetoscope, and Kinetophonograph, and I have been able to animate them as I did with Buffalo Bill's shooting. There are only 16 frames of the lasso thrower, and animating them produces less than 2 seconds of footage. Vicente Oropeza is the man with the lasso. Born in Puebla, Mexico in 1858, he is credited as having introduced trick roping to American rodeo. Oropeza stayed with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show for 16 years. His work with a lasso was an inspiration for Will Rogers. In 1900, he became the champion of the world in the trick and fancy roping contest held in New York City. There are 32 still frames of the Mexican Knife Duel in the History of the Kinetograph, Knetoscope, and Kinetophonograph, which is double the amount that was shown for Buffalo Bill Cody's shooting and Oropeza's lasso throwing. Piecing the frames together and animating them produces a video about 3 seconds in length. The 2 men performing the knife duel are Pedro Esquivel and Dionisio Gonzalez. Pedro Esquivel was known among his colleagues as Joe, and was titled the Chief of Cowboys in the 1890s. As for Dionisio Gonzalez, little is known except his role in the Mexican Knife Duel film. Although the video is of very low resolution, the large knives handled by both men are clearly visible. The 32 frames that make up this video are but a small part of the film that would be shown to audiences, but these 3 seconds show how exciting the film must have been. In order to view any of the 7 films made by Edison and Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, a person would need access to a kinetoscope with a copy of the film inside. The kinetoscope was a large box with a peephole. As the viewer looked inside, the strip of film would pass quickly between a lens and a light bulb. 46 frames would pass every second, animating whatever was captured on the film. The first kinetoscope parlor opened to the public in New York on April 14, 1894. Several kinetoscopes would be in these parlors, allowing people to come and experience the new technology. The machines were coin-operated, each film costing a nickel to view. These kinetoscope parlors became popular for a while, but projector technology was being developed during the same time, and would soon replace the kinetoscope. It was much easier to have one machine projecting a film for a large audience, who could share the experience together at the same time, than for people to have to wait their turn at peering inside a big box. Some of these early projectors were the phantoscope and the vitascope. 1895 was a big year for the kinetoscope and for these 7 short films. On January 11th, 1895, the Indianapolis Journal published, "Have you seen the kinetoscopes? If not, do so at once. 10 cents to see." Buffalo Bill's Bucking Bronco is second on the list of the 5 films offered. That same day, a newspaper out of Massachusetts published, "Hundreds here every day to see the Edison kinetoscopes." Annie Oakley, the woman champion rifle shot, breaking glass balls, stationary and thrown in the air, is the new attraction. The exhibit is free to purchasers presenting their checks. Costs 5 cents to peep otherwise. On February 1st, 1895, the Topeka State Journal ran the article, "The Kinetoscope, Edison's Latest Invention, What It Is and What It Does." At the end, they say, "Many and various are the subjects exhibited, such as a boxing match, a fencing bout, a cockfight, a bucking bronco, etc., etc. The people living in the cities of New York and Boston who have not seen and enjoyed the kinetoscope are considered out of date and out of fashion." On April 13, 1895, a Washington, D.C. newspaper advertised, "Only 5 cents now to see any one subject on any of the kinetoscopes." Down in the list is Buffalo Bill's Bucking Bronco. In November of 1895, in Kansas City, some people saw kinetoscope films for free. Kinetoscope exhibitions. Beginning Saturday, November 30th. The most wonderful of all Edison's wonderful inventions is the kinetoscope, which holds the same relation to the eye that the phonograph does to the ear. The hub has secured 3 of these wonderful machines and will give daily exhibitions of their wonders from 9 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night, except Saturdays, when the exhibition will continue until 10 o'clock at night. Among the many things that will be featured by these wonderful machines are reproductions of, and in the list we have bucking broncos and scenes from the Wild West show, Indian Sioux dance, and the Mexican duel scene Dirk knife fight. Thrilling and interesting. Come and enjoy it. There is no cost attached. When these 7 films were made in 1894, many events in the Wild West still hadn't taken place. The outlaw Bill Doolin was still making robberies. He would eventually be killed by a posse in 1896. Butch Cassidy and his gang were still active in the late 1890s, and the bandit Pearl Hart wouldn't rob a stagecoach until 1899. The Wild West days of the American frontier were coming to a close, but stories of the American West still captivated the imaginations of people across the globe. Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West show was proof of the West's popularity. The ending of the frontier coincided with the birth of cinema, so it's no wonder that Western films would make their mark in the history of film. These 7 short films made for the kinetoscope have no plot, no story structure. The technology hadn't advanced far enough for that yet. But they are snippets of the West, brief moments that could still entertain anyone with a nickel in their pockets.